Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the Engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay, every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Arts Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.
You're listening to the Sportsman's Nation Podcast Network, powered by Interstate Batteries. From your truck to your trail camera, Interstate Batteries has you covered. Visit your local Interstate Battery store today or online at interstatebatteries.com. Interstate Batteries, outrageously dependable.
My name is Clay Newcomb, and I'm the host of the Bear Hunting Magazine podcast. I'll also be your host into the world of hunting the icon of North American wilderness, the bear. We'll talk about tactics, gear, conservation, but we'll also bring you into some of the wildest country on the planet chasing bear. Thank you for checking out the Bear Hunting Magazine podcast. On this episode, we're talking about using mules to access the backcountry. My 13-year-old son and my 16-year-old good friend's son are on the 3-day Christmas whitetail hunt, hunting in Arkansas. Bear live in wild places, and it's an adventure to get to them. Bears are iconic of North American wilderness, and part of the adventure of hunting them is getting into wild places. I use a mule and have chosen to use a mule to access wild places, to get deeper, and to stay longer. And that is something just in the last few years that I have taken on as a challenge, and I have significantly enjoyed it. I have not enjoyed it because I necessarily think it's the best strategy for taking game back there. I haven't enjoyed it because it's the easiest. It's actually quite difficult and has complexified my hunting. It has put this whole nother sector on my hunting that I truly enjoy. In my hunting, I am fine-tuning the narrative of how I enjoy hunting and how I want to hunt in unique ways. Hunting with a mule is not necessarily the most efficient way or the only way to access backcountry, but it's the way that I have chosen to do it. If my only goal was to get antlers and meat, I would probably take the money and energy that I've invested in these mules and buy a lease in Kansas and go up there for a week and have a chance at a really nice buck. I have not chosen to do that. I have chosen to drive into probably some of the most difficult whitetail hunting that there is in low density areas, rugged, rough mountains, in places where you just don't see many deer. And I say that because I live in Northwest Arkansas. I could drive 2.5 to 3 hours and be in some of the best whitetail hunting in the country, and I've never done it. I choose to limit myself, and I deer hunt down there quite a bit. And that fits the narrative in the way that I want to and choose to limit myself in hunting. And I do not regret that decision. This whitetail hunt is also directly connected to my public land bear hunting. I want to make that clear because this is the Bear Hunting Magazine podcast where we talk about strategies for hunting bear and how to get people involved in bear hunting. And, well, this whitetail hunt takes place in a region of Arkansas that I bear hunt. And so intimately knowing the land is critical for public land bear hunting, where we cannot use bait or hounds, but we're just hunting these bears basically like deer. And so on this hunt, even though we're hunting whitetails, bear season's long over, I am storing up information about the region for where and how I plan to bear hunt next year. Lastly, before we get into the episode, I think appreciating diversity in hunting is critical for the future of our hunting. When I say diversity of hunting, what I mean is you'll see videos and hear podcasts of me talking about hunting bear over bait. And I love it. I'm passionate about hunting bear over bait. I think it's a challenge. I think it's a beautiful bear management tool to be selective. I think it is extremely difficult to kill an older, mature male over bait, no matter where you're hunting. I love it. If you pigeonholed me into thinking that that's all that I appreciated, you would be mistaken. I also love bear hunting with hounds. I think bear hunting with hounds is one of the most underrated, underappreciated, most misunderstood methods of legal hunting in today's world. Thirdly, I love spot and stalk bear hunting. I love spot and stalk bear hunting in the West. I love spot and stalk bear hunting in the East. And my favorite way to hunt bear right here in my home state of Arkansas is to just go out in the mountains and just hunt them like deer. And I value and appreciate all those different types of hunting. And I think that sometimes people are so focused on the method that they prefer that they think that that is the moral high ground or the elite way to hunt, and they look negatively, speak negatively, and look down upon other methods of hunting. That, my friends, is detrimental to the whole of the hunting community. We have to, in 2019, be people that are supportive of all legal methods of hunting, because the anti-hunting community is after hunting through incrementalism. Every single thing that they take from us, we have nothing left to give them. Every single thing that they take from us at this point is a win that is going to contribute to more wins. And so, yeah, it may be bear hunting with hounds today, but in 5 years, 10 years, whatever years, it's going to be bow hunting. And after that, it's going to be this. And after that, it's going to be that. We live in a critical time, and unification is the only way forward. And I stand and speak on behalf of those who are at the bottom of the barrel. Bear hunting is the target of the anti-hunting community, and we are rallying all of our brothers inside the hunting community to just stand for it. And by stand for it, I mean join organizations that are defending bear hunting. Don't talk negatively, even in your own camps, even in your own families. Don't disparage people that hunt in different ways than you, but build them up and say, man, we don't hunt that way. But man, if it's legal and it's conservation-based, scientific-based, if it's adding mass to the North American model of wildlife conservation, that is the most successful animal husbandry human effort on the history of the planet and the history of mankind, then we're for it. That's what we need to be saying to our kids. That's what we need to be saying to new hunters. And that's where we need to be. So you'll enjoy this podcast about hunting in the backcountry. You'll hear a few of our stories, and then we'll talk about the specifics of how we're using this mule. I hate it when somebody has to make excuses for audio quality on a podcast, but you'll have to excuse some part of this podcast because of the wind. Just view it through the filter of, this is some real hunting authenticity. The wind howls sometimes. Welcome to the Bear Hunting Magazine podcast. It is December 27th. Is that right?
2 days after Christmas, yep.
2 days after Christmas.
That's right.
And I am here with my son, Bear Newcomb, and practically my other son, David Spillmaker.
Practically.
Bear's 13, David's 16.
That's right.
And we are on right now in Arkansas, there's a 3-day rifle season. They call it the Christmas hunt. Goes the 26th, 27th, and 28th. And we are on a backcountry whitetail deer hunt. And before we get into the meat of the podcast, I want to tell you what we're going to talk about. Basically, we're going to try to keep this podcast fairly short, even though Bear Newcomb is extremely long-winded. We're going to talk about accessing the backcountry using mules, and we're going to talk about the way that we do it. And I'm going to start off by saying that I don't profess that it's the best way, and I don't profess to have a lifetime of experience doing this. And neither does David. But the way that I do it has worked for us, and we're learning every single time. And so we've packed back in here on using my mule that I've named Izzy. And so let's start. So that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about how to use a mule. But before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about exactly what we're doing and a little bit about this hunt. So now we packed back in. We're in National Forest here in Arkansas. We used the mule using a riding saddle and a panniard, which a panniard is basically a bag that drapes over a riding saddle. So in short, what we do is we use the panniard bags to pack all our gear, and then we get to so we lead the mule in. So we've only got one mule. There's three of us hunting, and there's one mule. Basically, the mule carried everything in for us. Right, Bear?
Not my backpack.
Not your backpack.
Not mine either.
Not David's backpack. So what we do is we led the mule in here, so we did have to walk. But once we got here, we unloaded all our gear, and then we had a riding saddle underneath the panniard. And like today, you guys walked from camp to hunt, but I rode Izzy from camp way off and hunted pretty far away using the mule. The other part of this that's valuable is that if we killed a deer back here, and now it's not bear season, but if it were bear season and we killed a bear, typically a limiting factor of being back in like this would be that if you killed a deer, and we're not terribly far back in, but if you killed a deer, you would have a hard time getting it out. So that's a limiting factor. But if you've got a mule that will carry game, and that's what I'm going to get into, kind of the specifics of some of the things that people think about mules that maybe aren't necessarily true. And so I'm going to state a statement and clarify it later. If you have a mule that will haul game, then you could use the mule to haul out game, and then we'd come back in and get our camp. But so let's start off by saying, Bear, we went on this exact same hunt and camped right here about a month ago. Is that right?
Yep.
On your birthday?
On my birthday, I turned 13 up here.
Yeah, you turned 13 on this mountain, didn't you?
Yeah.
I'll be darned. I didn't even think about that on this trip. And let me describe something too about the way that we're hunting, or the time period. We were back here on November 28th, put out these trail cameras. We saw some deer. Bear actually passed a legal buck back in here. And all the activity on the trail cameras was the first week of December, which I've decided is probably a good time to hunt the mountains of Arkansas. The late November and the first week of December, because the big 7-point was actually chasing a doe on our trail camera. But I say all that to say that we're right in amongst some pretty good deer for public land, National Forest. And this is David's grew up hunting with us some, but you know, you've not hunted a ton with us. Yeah. But so this is your first. Well, it's not your first backcountry hunt because you killed a gobbler turkey up here.
I did.
How old were you when we did that?
So it was 2 years ago, so 14.
Yeah, we did this exact same thing.
Exactly.
The mule, except your dad came. My dad came. There was about 6 or 7 of us.
That's right.
Shep came.
It didn't go quite as smoothly with the mule that time.
Why?
There was a lot of bags falling off and ripping and things like that happening.
Yeah,
we re-sewed the bag.
That's right. Yeah. We were. That was one of our earlier backcountry adventures on the mule, and I was intentionally trying to push the limits. I mean, we had that mule packed with so much stuff; it was unbelievable.
It was crazy.
So it really wasn't the mule's fault or the packing fault. We were just trying to put everybody's backpack on. We were trying to carry goods for 7 guys for 2 days, and not just goods, but a lot of goods. Water, carrying everybody's backpack. The mule was carrying everybody's shotguns. I mean, it was quite the ordeal. But so it was opening day of youth turkey season, and we got a ways back in here, camped out, and opened the morning of turkey season. We just walked up on top of the mountain and called in 2 gobblers.
We did. We called in 2 gobblers. We weren't even sitting down, and we just spotted 2 and then just hit the ground real fast, loaded the gun, and then shot this turkey coming by. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, we called them in. The wind was howling that morning, so we felt really fortunate that we even got on a turkey. Okay, so you guys walked out from camp. Bear, you left camp what time this morning?
Like 7:15, 7, I don't know.
Oh, we still got to go backwards. It rained last night. We got in here yesterday afternoon, hunted yesterday afternoon, very windy. Last night at like 7 p.m., it absolutely started to howl. The wind did, and it started to rain. It started raining at 7 p.m. and did not stop raining until probably 6:30 this morning. And I mean, it didn't just rain. How hard did it rain?
Well, we have this tarp up here, and it was just like banging, and you could hear like water dripping off of it, and it was like
thunder and lightning.
Yeah. I mean,
this morning,
the like entire tent would just like flash all of a sudden. It was crazy. So much lightning.
It was a pretty intense night, but we stayed dry. I think the only we're staying in just kind of a average 2-man tent. There's 3 of us in there, but we've got a tarp strategically placed with about 15 ties going to different trees. We've got our tent up. Or I mean, we've got a tarp over the tent, which helped some. I think that's the only reason we really stayed dry. Yeah. Okay, Bear. So David's alarm went off this morning at like 5:30, and I told him just to turn it off because the rain was just pounding down at 5:30. We all went back to sleep, and then I woke up and there was just a little bit of twilight out, and it had stopped raining. So you left the tent about 7:15.
7:15.
And what did you do?
Well, I went down to the spot that I was hunting yesterday, and I was thinking maybe I should go lower this time because David was hunting pretty close to me, and so we would have been like a couple hundred yards apart. So I decided to go lower, and I found a nice little spot where I could see way out in front of me, and I could see the creek at the very bottom of the mountain. And yesterday we hiked up this mountain, and then by the time we got up here, me and David just threw off our bags and just like sat down because how tired we were. And I realized that I was at the very bottom, and I was going to have to do it again.
Right.
So I sat there for probably an hour, and then I heard some, like, leaves shuffling over to my far right. And I pulled my gun up, and I slowly looked over there, and I saw the head of a turkey. And it started coming down, and I realized that there were more turkeys with it. And then 6 turkeys came out in front of me. And they all kind of just went down the mountain. And one came and was kind of curious to see what I was, because, you know, they see in color. And he came really close, like 10 yards. And then he went down. And I moved down a little bit. I moved down like probably, 30 yards so I could see even further out. But there was also this little trail, an old logging road, and I saw another turkey. Then, here's when it got exciting.
This is the most exciting thing that happened to us on this hunt.
A squirrel
Came
up right behind me.
Wow, that's exciting. So, Bear saw some turkeys. And how long did you hunt, Bear?
All day.
I mean, Bear walked back to camp. I saw him coming up the hill at about 5 o'clock, maybe 5:15. And so he hunted from 7:15 to, let's just say, 5:15. So was that 10 hours?
Yeah. Yep.
And you didn't come back to camp. I mean, 13-year-old boy walks out here and hunts for 10 hours. And I know that he sat there for a long time. And David basically did the same thing, except I told David to go hunt on this side of the ridge this morning, come back to camp, have lunch, go back to the other side of the ridge.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you were only in camp for an hour today.
Yeah, less than that, actually. Probably about 45 minutes altogether. Fortunately, my day wasn't as eventful as Bear's. I did see a bird, and I read a sign. It was pretty crazy, Not as crazy as Bear. Wasn't no squirrel, but,
Yeah. Wow, that's what's crazy about this backcountry hunting. And when we say backcountry, what we mean is just in Arkansas, we've got big blocks of national forest, which are pretty much continual, just big, mature timber. Very little timber harvest. The last 20 years in Arkansas in the national forest, there's been very little timber harvest. And I mean, just big woods. It's beautiful, and we like it. It's good bear habitat, but it's low densities of animals. And so I was the only one today that even saw deer. And I saw a deer while I was riding up the mountain on Izzy's back, and she always sees game before I do. I saw her poke her ears up and look, and I knew she saw a deer. And immediately I looked up, and probably 75, 80 yards away, I saw 2 whitetails running up the hill. That probably wasn't 150 yards behind our camp.
So you stuck your gun in between her ears and shot him.
I am gradually training her to shoot off of her back. I haven't done it yet, but I think she'd do fine. Yeah, I can shoot a bow off her back. Well, I do know that. Well, that's a great place to segue into using a mule to access this country. So I just want to give a little bit of a background, and I'm opening it up to these young men who both have been involved in a couple of backcountry mule hunts now. In Arkansas, we're not accessing backcountry that has 20 miles of, open trail before you start hunting. I mean, we're really accessing, comparative to the West, relatively small areas of wilderness or national forest. And so that one of the techniques that I learned from my really good friend James Lawrence, been on the podcast before, is packing in, using the mule to pack all your gear in, and then using the mule to ride out from your camp to go where you need to go, and using the mule to haul back any game that you have that you kill. I want to give some background. I grew up, I had a good friend that had a lot of horses. I spent quite a bit of time at his house, and we rode and stuff, but my family didn't have equine animals. So I would be just like any of you guys out there that aren't familiar with mules or horses, is I didn't have a ton of experience with them. And for those of you who are experienced horsemen or mule people, then I'm probably going to say a lot of stuff that maybe you even disagree with, but that's okay. Or you already know. But when I had this image, guys, of owning a mule, and I've had it for years and years, and I think it started as a little boy seeing people in the community that I grew up in, all these old men had mules. And mules are really kind of a icon of Southern culture, and not even Southern culture, but they're an icon of American agricultural rural regions. And I knew from growing up too, in the Ouachita Mountains of Arkansas, I knew guys that hunted on mules, and I think my dad probably told me stories about those guys, and even back in those days I thought it was cool what they did. They were using mules to get back in. And so about 3 or 4 years ago, I finally was in a position in life where I had a place for a mule, and I just was like, man, I'm going to buy a mule. And I didn't know much at all about them. I figured it was going to be harder than what I thought, but I kind of had this naive idea that you just bought a good mule and it was like riding a four-wheeler. I mean, you just kind of got on it and went. And, you'd have to be a good rider, and you'd have to, take care of it, and you'd have to learn how to load it, and you'd have to learn about all the tack and all the gear, and some of which I already knew. But I quickly found out that getting into mules and horses is a highly complex thing, and I had to do a lot of learning quick, because I don't want to discourage anybody from getting a mule or horse for the reasons that I have, but I will tell you, you better be ready for difficulty, and you better be ready to learn to love it. And that's what I have, and that's the reason I'm talking about it, is because I truly have learned to love mules now that I've messed with them and had some bad experiences with them too. But Bear, what did you think when we first started getting mules? Were you with me? You didn't think much.
Yes, I was.
Were you with me when we got that first mule out of Lamar, Missouri?
Yep.
Yeah.
I was.
Yeah. And then to give you a little bit of history about I think it was June of 2016, I guess it's only been, it'll be 3 years this June, so 2.5 years ago, I purchased a Greenbroke mule, which a Greenbroke mule is a mule that basically somebody has started to train, but they're not trained. And I bought a Greenbroke mule, brought it home, started riding it, had some good experiences with it, but also had some negative experiences with it. I got it. The mule ran off with me a couple of times when I first got it, which meant I was on its back riding it. The mule got spooked and just took off running, like full throttle. Couldn't get it stopped. I mean, basically just out of control. That was the first time. I'd always heard people talk about getting hurt on equine animals. And, you know, I knew not to get kicked. I mean, I knew you could get hurt by getting kicked. I knew you could get hurt by getting bucked off. But that first experience with the running mule made me realize how easily you could get hurt bad on a mule. But I got her stopped and consulted a good horse trainer about what I should do, and did what he told me. And it actually happened again. It wasn't because of what he told me. It was my fault that it happened again. Anyway, long story short, we actually had a pretty good relationship with Ellie Mae, the mule that I actually don't own anymore. But then in 2017, I got a young 18-month-old mule that we named Izzy. And this Izzy is the mule that we've got right now. So Izzy's only 3 years old. She's a paint-colored mule, which that means that she's like a paint horse. She's got white stocking feet, and she's got some white in different places on her, but she's pretty much red sorrel. And I trained Izzy from scratch. All she'd had on her was a halter, and she'd had her. She'd been handled just a little bit, but basically hadn't been handled much at all when I got her. And I it's a long story. I won't go into all the training details, but basically I did some research and a lot of learning and had some great advice from some good friends and trained this mule. And I called the Project Hunting Mule, and we videoed it, didn't we, Bear?
We did.
Because we needed some content for the YouTube channel, and I was training this mule, never done it before, and I thought, hey, that'd be cool to just every week for the next 6 weeks put out a training video. Not trying to teach somebody something, but just trying to show them what I was doing. I mean, literally, I was just looking for content. And made this series of videos, and David, did you know that episode 6 of Project Hunting Mule on YouTube has over 800,000 views.
Wow.
Almost 1 million views.
Really?
Well, maybe not almost 1 million. 20% away from 1 million. Yeah, did you know that, Bear?
I did not.
And people cuss your dad every day on there. And then some people think I did a good job. Oh, man, YouTube. But, let's see. What I want to talk about, too, is why mules. Do you guys have any questions that you think people ought to know about using mules if you're getting in the backcountry, like relevant questions?
Why would you get a mule instead of a horse?
Okay, that's a good question. Why would you get a mule instead of a horse? Okay, so horses are much more readily available than mules. And to start off, a mule is a cross between a female horse or a mare and a male donkey, which is a jack. So a jack and a mare breed to make a sterile hybrid, which is a mule. And there's something that happens when you make a hybrid animal. So you breed two different types of animals together, but they're close enough to get together genetically that they can actually breed and produce offspring, that you have something called hybrid vigor. And the mule is the epitome of what they call hybrid vigor, because basically that's where you get a synergy that happens because of a cross. A synergy would mean like a amplification of positive traits that are greater than the sum of the individuals, in essence. And so a mule, what we would say is that a mule has a lot of the really great traits of a horse, but it also has a lot of the really great traits of the donkey, but doesn't have the bad traits of the donkey and doesn't have some of the bad traits of the horse. And so what you get in a mule is you get an animal that has more strength and stamina than a horse. That's what they say anyway, and I know there's probably people that have examples where they weren't. But in general, a mule has more stamina than a horse. But the main thing that a mule has over a horse is it has more sure-footedness. The feet of a mule are typically smaller hoofed and harder hoofed like a donkey. And in rough, rocky terrain, a mule can pick through it with extreme intentionality. And that's why that, in the Grand Canyon National Park, they don't ride horses down to the bottom, they ride mules. Mules are sure-footed, they're not going to fall over. Mules are, in the South, part of the reason they use mules for plowing and for a lot of work. On this very mountain that we're on, boys, did y'all know this? That they used mules to log this in the early 1900s? This very mountain, on this ridge, guaranteed, there were men that were up here logging, using mules to haul logs down. So mules, but in the South, mules didn't need as much water as horses, and they had more stamina than horses, and they could tolerate the heat better than horses, okay? And so why do I use a mule? Partly because of safety. A mule will almost not... A mule has a very strong ability to not get itself in danger. So, for instance, like my mule, when it gets tangled up in its lead rope, which it does sometimes, when it feels pressure up against it, it doesn't fight against that pressure and freak out like sometimes a horse could do. A mule won't go someplace that it's going to hurt itself. And now that would be in contrast to what people would sometimes say about horses, is a well-trained horse would probably run off a cliff if you told it to. But there's a lot of really positive traits about horses. Horses are faster. Horses are more comfortable. Horses are easier to train. Horses are more readily available, and horses are generally easier to get along with. A mule does have that stubborn nature of a donkey, which in the end is good, because when you get I've heard people say this, and I believe it. When you have a good trained mule, you'll never go back to a horse. I'm not trying to step on horse people's feet, because there's tons of great mountain horses for doing exactly what we're doing that would easily do what we're doing here today. Baird, were you going to say something?
Also, horses, you have to feed them grain every day, and you have to get shoes for them, and that costs.
So a mule is much more hardy than a horse. I mean, basically, I feed my mules just regular old fescue and Bermuda hay and very, very little grain, and they stay fit and healthy all year round. Horses, you gotta feed them more. You gotta feed them more grain. They're a little bit harder to take care of. And shoeing them. What about shoeing them, Bear?
You have to shoe them once every 8 weeks. And
a horse.
Yeah, and you have to. If you can't do it by yourself, you have to pay for somebody else to do it.
Yeah, you got to pay a farrier. And anyway, we've never shoed any of our mules, and we ride them in this rough, rocky mountains, and they've never had any trouble with them. So mules are cheaper, You don't have to spend, $1,200 a year on a farrier. You don't have to feed them as much. They're just easier to maintain their fitness and health. And they're just sure-footed in the mountains, and I just like them. I think that's the main reason people have mules is because they just like them. I mean, it's like, why do you drive a Ford over a Chevy? Well, I just like a Chevy. You just like it. But David, can you think of any good? Did you have a question?
Hey, how about this?
Well, like, I know you said that Izzy was probably carrying, 150 to 175 pounds. I mean, how much can they carry?
That's a good question. It all depends upon how far you're taking them. Now, she was carrying 175 pounds of our gear, but I've got a saddle that probably weighs 40 plus pounds, heavy saddle. So she was probably carrying 225 pounds of dead weight coming up here, and she could probably carry. You wouldn't want to pack a whole lot more on her than that. And if we were going real far, like let's say we were in Montana and we were packing back in 15 miles through rough terrain, we wouldn't have packed her that heavy. But for as short a pack as we had, which is really probably less than a mile, but straight up a mountain, we could have packed her probably a little bit heavier even. But most of your packers are only wanting to pack about 150 pounds on an animal that they're going to take in very far. But so mules are readily available in the South. I helped a guy up north last year buy a mule because he was up in Michigan and wanted a mule and couldn't find one. But down in this part of the world, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, southeast Kansas, Tennessee, you're going to have a lot of mules because that's kind of historic mule country. But I guess the biggest thing that I'll say is that if you're going to get into them, you can't, if you don't enjoy the process, it's just going to be a lot of work because it does add a layer of work. Like, yes, I was able to go up to the top of the mountain this morning with ease. I climbed about 1,500 feet of elevation today and got off my mule with fresh legs. Okay, so that's pretty good. That would have taken me at least an hour, probably an hour and a half carrying a big heavy pack like I was today. So that's the beauty of it, is that you can get to where you hunt, and when you're there, you'll have fresh legs. But what you guys just woke up this morning, put on your hunting gear, and just left out from camp. It took me 15 minutes, 20 minutes of pretty hard work to get Izzy bridled up, saddle on, bags, all the everything. Just get her ready to go. And then when I got up to where I wanted to hunt, I tied her up. And Izzy's done pretty good at staying tied without throwing a fit. Like every aspect of this is what you have to train this animal to do. And by training it, sometimes that means just going out and doing it. But some animals, when you tie them and leave them, might freak out and paw the ground and neigh and throw a fit and make a ruckus and try to break loose. So Izzy's really good. I left Izzy today for 4 or 5 hours at one stretch without going back to her. Came back to her and she was fine. Twice we've let Izzy get away from us, Bear, hadn't we?
Yep.
Well, actually it was Ellie Mae once. Tell us about that.
Ellie or Izzy?
Well, it was Ellie Mae that got away from us. The first time we came up here. Do you remember?
Not a lot.
Well, it was on your birthday 2 years ago, and we hunted and we came back and Ellie wasn't there.
Oh yeah, and then you never went back up.
Yeah. We Bear and I left Ellie Mae for 6 hours and came back and she was gone, and she had chewed her lead rope. She had chewed. That was something that was new to me. Ellie had chewed her lead rope. And we were camped on the side of the mountain, so we walked back to camp in the dark carrying a saddle because I'd taken the saddle off of her way up on top, and came down the mountain And interestingly enough, the closest residence to where we were hunting was a bar. And so I went to the bar late at night, told Bear, I said, son, stay in this truck. If anyone comes to the truck, don't open the door and just duck yourself down and hide. Anyway, I went into this bar, and country bar, late at night, Saturday night. Have you heard this story, David?
I haven't heard this.
I think I told this at church one time. Do you not remember that?
I might.
And anyway, I go into this bar, and I'm dressed in all camo, and I mean every head in the place, which there were probably 10 people in there, turns to me, and they see me walk up to the bar, and what I'm going to tell this woman is, hey, I lost my mule. And if you hear anybody driving down this highway that pulls in here and says, hey, there's a mule or a horse up on the highway, like, I wanted her to call me. I didn't know what was going to happen. Anyway, I as soon as the people saw me trying to get the waitress, the bartender's attention, it was a woman, every head in the place turned towards me. And everybody went quiet. Everybody stopped their conversation and looked at me. And I go, and there's loud music playing, and so I'm yelling, and I say, I lost my mule. I lost my mule up on the mountain. If you see it, I'd like to leave my number, and you can call me if anybody pulls in here and says they saw a mule. And people were like, mule, you lost your mule? You'll never find it. Yeah, it was great. So yeah, that happened, Bear. And then the other time when we were tracking River's bear up here, Izzy got away from us.
Yep.
And what I learned about these mules, 2 different mules did the exact same thing, as they went back the direction that they came from, and we were able to catch them back, not right back at the truck, but basically en route to the truck. Both mules we were able to catch hours later. But that's no fun. But you know, hunting on mules has been extremely rewarding for me, but I really enjoy riding in the mountains. And one of the biggest things for me is, as I've tried to decide, is hunting on a mule. Where's your flashlight out, Bear? Is hunting on a mule advantageous to killing game? And I haven't decided if it is or if it isn't. Sometimes I think it'd be better if I just got out of the truck and just walked up the mountain and hunted. But I can guarantee you one thing, Bear. The big buck that we found last year, we would have never found, because I jumped the buck while I was on the mule, and I was back in a place I never would have been if I'd have been walking on foot. And so I jumped this buck, and then later came back in and hunted that deer and passed a few deer while I was hunting that one. And that's when we started hanging cameras back in here, Bear, trying to find these deer. And so a mule just basically opens up more country to you. It doesn't necessarily make anything easier. That's my assessment on it at this point. And I could talk and give a whole another 30 minutes of commentary on how to buy a mule, what you're looking for. But I will say this: not every mule will carry game. I mean, Izzy will, because I've gradually, over the course of training her, put game on her. The first thing I put on her was a coon, and that may sound like reasonable. You're like, well, yeah, throw a coon over your mule. That doesn't sound bad, but man, equine animals they're prey animals. They're designed to flee from danger, and they are skittish of almost everything unless you train them and expose them to that thing in safe situations where they realize that it won't hurt them. So by nature, they're almost afraid of everything. So we've coon hunted off Izzy and put mules over coons over the saddle horn. That was the first thing. The second thing, last year I turkey hunted on Izzy and killed a gobbler turkey and carried out the gobbler. Just put a piece of paracord between the turkey's feet, put that paracord over the saddle horn, and just came right off the mountain. We're going to come back to turkey hunting off a mule. This year, I've yet to kill a deer while I've been hunting back like this. But this year, when Bear killed the deer a month ago, I basically exposed the mule to the carcass and fed the mule with a carcass, like laying at the mule's feet. So the mule had to come over and eat grain right by this deer and got real used to it. And so now I think if we killed a deer, Izzy would figure she was about to get some grain, so she'd be happy. And I eventually got the deer on her back, and so Izzy's pretty well mannered when it comes to game, so I don't think we'd have any trouble with her. Now, bear would be a totally different experience. I've not exposed her to bear, that smell, because they do smell. But that being said, now turkey hunting is a whole different story. Turkey hunting in the big national forests on muleback is the way to go, because you ride the mule and just call right off her back. Like, I don't even get off her back. I just ride up this ridge calling. And when I hear a gobble, then just get off, tie her up, and go hunt a turkey. Now, the only negative thing is if you were calling like that and one gobbled like 75 yards away, I mean, you'd have to just act quick. And the mule might end up spooking the turkey. But most of the time, you're going to hear a turkey gobble further off, and you're going to be able to either turn and ride away from the turkey. Does that make sense? Like, you hear a turkey gobble and it's 100 yards, well, then just turn dead away and ride back 50, 60 yards, get off, tie the mule, and then come back up to where you were, call, work the turkey. Or it just gets you back into good country. Like I ride last year, I never heard a turkey while I was on Izzy's back, but I got into some good country way back in there, tied her up, and then went hunting on foot, killed the turkey, then used her to haul it all out. So turkey hunting on muleback is big. But, you know, it's dangerous. That's one negative about it. My daughter, River, was... If you listen to one of the first podcasts, I talked in detail about a mule wreck that my daughter had back in October while we were bear hunting. We used our mules to haul in bear bait to a secluded property that we couldn't take vehicles into. And on the way down, it was the same deal. We were using panniers, bags that lay over a saddle. On the way down, we took the panniard off, and River was just going to ride the mule down. And the mule got away from her. River lost her balance while ducking under a limb. River wasn't used to the mule she was on. The mule started to run down the mountain, and basically the mule was loping down the mountain out of control with my 15-year-old daughter on her back. And River came off, busted her head, had to get... How many stitches did she have, David?
I don't know. It was like 10 or 8. I don't remember.
It was a lot. I don't remember either.
She also got a concussion.
Yeah, she got a concussion. It was a bad deal. It was a father fail, you know. To this day, it was a mistake. I had a lot of faith in the mule and in River, and still have faith in the mule and River, but it wasn't the best combination. And
she also totaled Ellie.
Yeah. River
she sliced her eye open too.
River sliced her eye open. A limb. My daughter River's had a tough go at it with mules. And we've made a couple of visits to the ER because of it.
But she still likes them.
She loves them.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I won't hardly let her ride them anymore. But no, a limb sliced her eyelid while she was on the mule, and had to take her. She came back to the house bleeding all down her face. It was pretty spooky. But I guess I'm saying some of the negative things because I had kind of a romantic view of owning a mule. In that I didn't think it was going to be easy, but I guess I just didn't know how hard it was going to be. But boys, this is where the story turns awesome, because things that are really hard, that are difficult, that stretch you, that cause you to grow, that cause you to have to learn a totally new set of skills and test yourself, test your fear, are good. Because one of the greatest external accomplishments, let me describe it like that. One of my favorite external accomplishments that I've ever done is training Izzy from scratch. And I mean, she's a good mule, man. She'll go where you point her. She'll do what you tell her. She'll cross water. She'll get in a trailer. She'll let a hound ride on her back. She's a heck of a mule for a young mule. And I had to overcome a lot of fear. I had to overcome a lot of knowledge barriers. I had to overcome a lot of limitations to do that. And so the difficulty of it has actually made me into something stronger than what I was. And so just because it's hard doesn't mean you shouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm. And as a testament to that, I remember when you bought Izzy, because I was there.
You were there, weren't you?
Yeah, and that was crazy. She was absolutely out of control when that happened. But now, I mean, we pack stuff on her and, let her up the mountain, and she'll do exactly like you said, everything that you tell her to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Bear, you've never been in a mule wreck, have you?
Nope.
No?
I once, when we were riding Ellie one time, and I kind of turned her and Shep was on the back and he flew off.
Oh. Yeah.
Broke his arm.
Man, we're telling all these bad stories. Yeah, the first 2 weeks we had a mule, it wasn't even the mule's fault. My son just fell off and broke his arm. We've had a pretty rough go at it now that we start stacking up the casualties. And I had a pretty hard fall off Ellie Mae when I first got her. So it's not something that you get into lightly. But it has, who knows what the future holds, but I doubt there'll ever be a time in my life where I don't have a mule. I love them. I really do. I enjoy riding them. Hunting these mountains is so much fun to cruise around on a mule. You got to be tough, but I love it. And hunting these mountains is different than hunting out west. These woods are thick. You're fighting limbs. You're fighting super steep hills. It's mainly the limbs that make it difficult. But all right, in closing, this is just supposed to be a short podcast, just talking about backcountry hunting with mules. Maybe at a later date we could talk about what we packed. But the biggest thing that is cool about this is we could have all carried, 50-pound packs.
Yeah.
And walked in here.
A 16-pound pack.
We could have.
Not 50.
But we are living like kings up here on the mountain. And where we're hunting, we have to carry in all our own water because there's no water sources up high on these mountains that are predictable anyway. There's water now because it rained, but yesterday, before that, there wasn't any water up here.
There probably won't be any tomorrow.
Yeah, so we have to carry water. So for 3 guys for 3 days, you're talking, you need 40 pounds of water or more. And so by having this mule, basically we're able to be real comfortable in the backcountry, have plenty of food, plenty of sleeping bags, plenty of tents and tarps, and for me, camera gear, because I'm filming a lot of these hunts and doing a lot of filming. So I got a ton of gear that most people don't have, and that's part of the reason I ride a mule. Closing thoughts, guys. Closing thoughts.
Mules for the win.
Mules for the win.
Mules for the win.
This is your closing comment.
Okay. One time, Izzy let me get on her back while I was coming from a tree.
What do you mean?
Well, you tied her to a tree. I climbed the tree, dropped down on her back.
When was this?
This summer.
Izzy or Ellie? Izzy. All right. Well, hey, hope you enjoyed our fireside talk. We're sitting here on the side of the mountain, and we're gonna hunt tomorrow. And but as of yet, we hadn't killed a deer. But such is this mountain hunting. Thanks for listening to the Bear Hunting Magazine podcast. Do me a favor. Do all of us a favor. consider subscribing to Bear Hunting Magazine, the only print bear hunting magazine in the world. I think it's pretty awesome that for 20 years now, 20 years, Bear Hunting Magazine has been the only print all bear hunting magazine in the world. And, you may say, well, I'm not that big a bear hunter. I don't really want to subscribe to the magazine. Well, by your subscription to the magazine, you're supporting a very complex, dynamic, and awesome aspect of North American big game hunting. And Bear Hunting Magazine kind of represents that sector of hunting. And so, really by subscribing to the magazine, you're feeding into media, whether it be our YouTube channel, our print magazine, our social media, that's promoting ethical, conservation-based big game predator hunting for bears. And so check it out. We've also got lots of cool merchandise on our website. Check out our YouTube channel. You might even, if bear kills a big buck tomorrow, you'll probably even see a video of it up on our channel. But if he doesn't, you'll never hear about it, and this hunt will be lost like smoke in the wind.
But if David does, you still won't hear about it?
Well, if David does too, yes. Or if I do. But, hey, it's an honor, guys, to be able to hunt in a place like this in the year 2018. It's almost 2019. By the time people hear this, it'll be 2019 for sure. It's an honor, a privilege that we have public lands that we can carry our firearms into, pack our mules back in here, put out our trail cameras and get pictures of nice bucks and be able to hunt. So what we got to do, what you boys have to do, what I have to do, is keep the wild places wild, because that's where the bears live.
And the deer.
And the squirrels.
You didn't see a squirrel today?
Well, Bear did, and I believe that he saw squirrels.
I saw a monster gray squirrel. I mean, it was a shooter for sure.
We got to go to bed.
Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay? Every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Arts Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.